Good evening. I'm Don Purock. I'm a professor of education policy, leadership, and innovation in the School of Education at the University of Michigan. Welcome to tonight's town hall. Our topic is the teacher shortage in Michigan, framing challenges and envisioning solutions. Across the United States, districts and schools are facing a fundamental problem, securing high-quality certified teachers and substitute teachers across the full complement of grade levels, subject areas, and support services in urban, suburban, rural, and indigenous communities. Just last week, the United States Secretary of Education, Miguel Cardona, issued a nationwide call to action, challenging states, higher education, and schools to work together to leverage resources from the American Rescue Plan to address the nation's teacher shortage. Indeed, while evidence and concern have been gathering for at least 2 decades, the COVID pandemic has the teacher shortage as front page news and a center stage policy problem. In Michigan, we see evidence of the teacher shortage in school closures due to staffing issues, in emergency orders allowing all district staff with a high school diploma to serve as substitute teachers, and in budget proposals that include incentives aimed at addressing concerns about high levels of teacher retirement. So even so, defining the parameters of the teacher shortage in Michigan is difficult. In a December 2021 report, our colleagues at Michigan State University's Education Policy Innovation Collaborative reported that weaknesses in available data make it difficult, if not impossible, to accurately measure Michigan's teacher shortage. It's in the thick of this uncertainty that we come together tonight. Even if we can't yet measure it, our aim tonight is to work together as a community to frame the teacher shortage as a policy problem, to develop shared understandings of its essential parameters so that we can think more clearly together about underlying challenges and potential solutions. Our first step was to pool the collective insights of our audience by crowdsourcing issues and questions about the teacher shortage during the registration process. We were excited to receive input from over 80 members of tonight's audience. Our team synthesized and categorized this input to construct a shared framework to structure tonight's conversation. Through this process, we learned that our audience members are focused on 2 primary topics: improving the pipeline, recruiting more people into the teaching profession, and increasing retention, ensuring that teachers stay in the profession once they've entered. Audience members are also welcome to use the Q&A function to submit questions during the town hall, and we'll do our best to take up additional questions as time permits. Now, our next step is to flesh out this framework by raising these topics for conversation with a distinguished panel representing diverse constituencies in Michigan and with capabilities to share multiple perspectives. I'd like to continue then by having our panelists introduce themselves. Ms. Heard.
Hello, everyone. My name is Arlyssa Heard. I am one of the deputy directors of an organization called 482 Forward, which is an education organizing network here in the city of Detroit. And we fight for education justice, not only in the city, but around the state of Michigan.
Thank you, Mr. Terrence Martin.
Good evening, and thanks for having me. My name is Terrence Martin. I am a elementary school teacher who's now serving as president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers, a union that services the nearly 5,000 folks who service Detroit students each and every day here in the city of Detroit. Very glad to be here. Thank you.
Welcome. Dean Elizabeth Moje.
Good evening, everyone. I am Elizabeth Moje. I am the Dean of the School of Education. I'm also a faculty member. I study literacy, language, and culture here at the University of Michigan. So happy to have you all here tonight.
Welcome. Senator Dayna Polehanki.
Hi there. My name's Dayna Polehanki, and I live in Livonia. I represent the State Senate District 7, and I'm the Democratic Vice Chair of the Education and Career Readiness Committee in the Michigan Senate.
Welcome. And Dr. Michael Rice.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. My name is Michael Rice, State Superintendent, Chair of the State Board of Education, responsible for the leadership of the Michigan Department of Education. Michigan's a local control state with 835 local education agencies, school districts, if you will, 56 intermediate school districts. Among many responsibilities, the State Board, Department of Education, and State Superintendent approve educator preparation programs and certify and recertify educators.
Welcome to all of our panelists. So let's begin with our first topic. One theme that ran through the questions submitted by audience members centers on increasing the number of young people who choose teaching as a career, including young people of color. Now, this is a matter that sits at the bridge from high school to college. And sitting there, it runs up against the rising cost of higher education, in the matter that low initial salaries for teachers make it difficult to cover debt from student loans. It runs up against a long tradition of unpaid student teaching for college students who are often struggling to pay their own tuition. And it runs up against a labor market that provides many other attractive options for young people. Now, Ms. Heard, in your work with 482 Forward, you engage with many young people who will soon be making college and career decisions. From your perspective, what would it take for more young people to choose the teaching profession and to become public school teachers, either in their communities or elsewhere in Michigan?
Thank you. You know, I think that's it's a great question. And I think it has a couple layers to it, because what I think it's a this and then a that. So what I mean by that is, you know, children first have to be inspired. I think most of us can relate to having that one teacher that pushed us, inspired us, believed in us when no one else did. And I think that's where it starts. You know, the kids, they get to see your first experience with a teacher is inside the classroom, in a building with other teachers, other students, resources, and you get to see it all. But I think there's also the downside as well. In addition to all of the great stuff happening, children also are now seeing the struggle, the disrespect that I believe that teachers have faced, the blame game. We're seeing all of the politics being played in the classroom and teachers feeling the brunt end and the pressure. Who wants to sign up for that, right? But I think what has to happen is, this is the opportunity for us to have some really hard and honest conversations with our incoming students who show an interest, and we have to let them know this. First of all, teaching is not just something to do. It's a ministry, in my opinion. It's a calling. You have to want to be dedicated to change lives, because that's exactly what you're doing. But with that said, I think we almost have to tell our young folks to get ready and put your war clothes on, because you also are going to have to want to be a justice warrior. So this is it's not going to be for the weak. I know it sounds scary, and I don't mean to offend anybody with what I'm about to say, but I'm not trying to trivialize the civil rights movement in any way, but I want you to think about something for a second. Folks fought in the civil rights movement knowing that it was a strong possibility they were not going to see the benefits of what they were fighting for. And I think we have to be honest with our folks, our young people now, that you're going to change lives. It's going to be a great career. However, there are some things you're going to have to fight and stand up for that's not going to necessarily take place or manifest itself in the next 2, 3, or 4 years. It may take 10 years to change this thing around. But I think we've got some young people who understand that. They're willing to be a change agent. They want to see change, and they're ready for the war.
In the students that you interact with, do they see teaching as a path through which they can act on their passion for social justice?
Well, of course, with the students that we work with, of course, because they are on the path, they want to change things, right? If you talk to young people today, they can run down and tell you what they don't like or what they see in the classroom or in the schools that's happening, that they want change for it. They speak up about it all the time. I think we just have to prepare them and be honest with them that this is not just going to be a gravy train. This is not glitter and unicorns. There's going to be it's a hard thing here. However, it can be a rewarding thing. And who wouldn't want to be a part of the process to change a system? And that's what justice and social justice and education is all about. Changing systems for the greater good. Even if we may not see the full benefit right now, we know that it'll get greater later.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Now, getting people into teacher education programs is one thing. Getting them into actual teaching positions in districts and schools is another. And getting them into the right teaching positions is quite another. These are matters that sit at the bridge from college to career. Now, in comments submitted in advance by members of our audience, they noted that structuring this bridge requires providing guidance and incentives for choosing academic majors in which there's an actual demand for teachers, especially teachers serving diverse learners, including special education students and English language learners. Our audience members noted that it requires being equally attentive to placing teachers in urban, suburban, rural, and indigenous communities. And one even suggested that it may require thinking differently about brokering jobs through a statewide job posting and application network to replace the many fragmented county level and district level systems that make it difficult to identify and apply for available teaching positions in Michigan. Now, Dean Moje, the School of Education at the University of Michigan serves both undergraduate and master's students in teacher education who are crossing the bridge from college to career. From your perspective, what are the challenges in supporting aspiring teachers in crossing this bridge in ways that meet the needs and demands of districts, schools, and students throughout Michigan?
Well, thank you for this question, Dr. Purak. It's a big question. But I would start by saying we think of the question is really not so much about challenge, but as demand. So what are the demands for teachers? What do we need in teachers? So we first have to work on building the knowledge base, equipping our teachers with evidence-based tools and practices that will allow them to actually move into practice in multiple settings in really powerful ways. But we also need them to understand the contextual demands of teaching and be able to learn how to work with children perhaps from backgrounds different from their own, across a wide range of backgrounds, and how to differentiate instruction to meet those children's needs. The second thing we have to do is really build experience. We are a practice-based teacher education program, and the idea of being truly practice-based is, something I think that's important across the state and across the nation. And so we have to give our students really supported placement experiences, intentional placements where they can practice, scaffolded placements where they can practice and learn, where people with more expertise are intervening on their instructional practice and helping them learn to be the best teachers they can be. And then finally, we need to continue to support them into what some people call induction. We are calling residency at our school at Marygrove, in which we continue to work with teachers in their first 3 years of teaching to help them be truly efficacious, to help them actually learn how to meet the needs of real learners in real time. So I would say if there's one thing that we find challenging, it's time. We simply do not give the time that we need to give to the preparation of teachers. We know that well-prepared teachers make a difference over and above everything else, and we need to dedicate ourselves to that in this state and in this nation. It's very challenging when we're facing a teacher shortage, but it's critically important. We would say we believe that intergenerational programs can help to build that time. So thinking about grow your own programs that then move all the way through residency programs and into expert teacher status, we think is the way to actually move forward in meeting these challenges.
Thank you very much. Now, Senator Paulhanke, you're someone who, in addition to currently serving as a state senator, you were a high school teacher for 20 years. I'm curious what your perspectives are on both guiding students, high school students from high school into teacher education programs. What do you say to students who are considering teaching as a career? And what do you say to them about choosing majors, choosing content areas, choosing grade levels that may be outside of their comfort zone, but that would better meet the needs of districts and schools in Michigan?
Well, I'm thinking I came to teaching a little late in the game. It was a second career for me. So I was 28, 29, and 30 years old going through teacher preparation program at Alma College. And I got into it. I was in California. I moved home. My dad was a teacher for 30 some years. And I thought, you know, I liked my dad's life. I saw how he lived and he seemed happy, and we had enough, and we had great health insurance and benefits. And yeah, the summers, you know, you had a couple months off in the summer and you could coach and, you know, supervise clubs, and, you know, some of that you still can do. You know, there's still a lot of creativity in teaching. There's still a lot about it that's rewarding, that can be rewarding. It's still a great career. But unfortunately, our state legislature that is responsible for appropriating money, school funding, thinks that schools have enough. I know it's hard to believe, but they think that you've got enough money. They think that the teachers, 75% of whom are women in Michigan, 80% nationwide, that they do it because it's a passion, because it's a calling. And even though you have to have a bachelor's degree just to get your foot in the door, that they're satisfied. You know, that's, you know, this is just a calling for them, and they're not in it for the pay. Well, that's not true. You got to make a living. So we've definitely got to do something about teacher starting salary. We've got to do something about the steps. You know, I knew if I could work 10 years, I'd be at the top of my pay scale, and I could enjoy that for the rest of my career. Might not make more, but now they're having the steps. It takes twice as long to get there. It's really a mess. So my work in the Michigan legislature has been a little frustrating because I'm in the minority party and we don't get to decide which bills become law and which bills die. But I'm always fighting for increased fair salary for the highly trained, highly educated teachers in Michigan.
Thank you. Thank you. So as we think about the matter of building bridges for aspiring teachers, there's not just the matter of building bridges from high school to college and college into classroom. There are also less conventional alternative means of going from aspirational teacher to classroom teacher. And members of our audience, in their questions submitted in advance, wondered what our panelists thought about these options. People who are in attendance tonight asked questions about alternative routes to teacher certification that don't require university-based teacher education, emergency certification for non-educators, or even recruiting teachers from other states, all of which they saw is viable options to consider in the face of the teacher shortage in Michigan. Now, some of these options have already been in play for a long time. Others have emerged in response to staffing difficulties amidst the pandemic. Dr. Rice, in your role as State Superintendent of Instruction, you're in a position of needing to consider all of these options, possibly even more. From your perspective, given evidence at your disposal, what do you see as the most viable routes for improving the pipeline into the teaching profession, both in the short term and in the long term?
Right. Thank you for the question, Dr. Purak. But before I answer, though, I'd be remiss if I didn't put the teacher shortage issue in context. We have a teacher shortage in many parts of the country. In Michigan, we have a teacher shortage in large measure because our state legislature underfunded public education over a period of years. I appreciate Senator Paulhanke as an educator, a legislator, and a champion of public education. She's a joy to work with. This underfunding of public education by the state legislature predates her by 20 years in the state legislature. A 2019 MSU study, sorry, it wasn't a U of M study, but an MSU study indicated that between 1995 and 2015, Michigan was dead last in the country in total revenue growth, inflation adjusted, and was third to last in the country in per pupil revenue growth, also inflation adjusted. State legislature underfunded public education, which diminished inflation adjusted compensation for educators and reduced supports for teachers. Teaching profession suffered, and by extension, our children were harmed as well. Past state legislatures undermined the teaching profession. It's the current state legislature's responsibility to help rebuild the profession. So to the question, Governor Whitmer's budget includes $2.3 billion of recruitment and retention recommendations. Michigan Department of Education developed many of those recruitment proposals and is strongly supportive of the governor's recruitment and retention package. It includes grow your own programs for support staff and students who aspire to be teachers, fellowships for current college students working toward a teaching career, stipends for student teachers, regional efforts to address the teacher shortage, and retention bonuses. It's an outstanding set of proposals. The legislature should pass the recommendations in a budget supplemental now, rather than waiting until the summer budget, so that we have no opportunity at that point to begin to address the teacher shortage before next school year. Dr. Purak, you mentioned reciprocity. We have 1,000 teachers a year that are initially certified outside of the state, subsequently certified to teach in Michigan. Last year was 1,326 educators initially certified outside of the state, subsequently certified inside the state. 31% of all teachers in the state were initially certified outside of the state last year. We've recommended to the legislature, and there are bills in play currently in the Senate that would reduce the regulatory barrier, which would make it even easier to come into the state from out of state. This is not the solution midterm, long term, but this is part of the solution in the short run.
Thank you very much. Now, Mr. Martin, in your role as the president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers, I'm curious to hear your views on the most viable routes for improving the pipeline into the teaching profession, whether conventional, as we discussed earlier, or alternative routes.
Well, let me first say that obviously there is no substitute for a professionally trained educator for our students, and particularly our most vulnerable, who many of them happen to be in the city of Detroit. As you can recall, we have about a third of our student population in the city of Detroit that receive specialized student services. So those are the individuals, not only who are classroom teachers, but our school psychologists, our social workers, our nurses who work with our students. And so when we talk about this issue of a teacher shortage, we really have to reframe that into an education professional shortage, because it's not just the classroom teachers that we're having an issue with retaining and attracting. It's also those who touch students each and every day, from our paraprofessionals to our clerical staff, to those who help to support the classroom. But as I think about this question, one of the things that we have focused ourselves on here in Detroit as a union is really retaining the folks that we have. We know that Detroit is a very unique place to teach and a very unique place to learn. And so we certainly want those who want us. And that is extremely important to us. And so there are a number of things that we have done, one at the bargaining table, to really look at solidifying and stabilizing our workforce. It was mentioned earlier about the starting teaching salary for teachers. And we've done that. We've raised our starting salary to one of the top in the state. We've done that. It was also mentioned about the steps and having to wait to move and matriculate up the salary schedule. We've shortened our steps over the years, and we've also increased the top salary for our teachers. We also have a grow your own program within our local, and we particularly target those with a bachelor's degree who come in and really want to work with our young people in this population. We help to get them certified, and then obviously we move them up the salary schedule as well. But it is not just for our folks, it's also for any employee in the city of Detroit in Detroit Public Schools who wants to be a teacher. We work with those individuals as well. And so I think, obviously there's no one thing that we have to do, right? We've got to do a multitude of things and pick from all of those different areas. But I would be remiss if I didn't just help to reiterate what Dr. Rice said earlier about the fact that the state has essentially starved our school districts in the city, in the state, and particularly in Detroit. There are actually laws on the book that are only pertain to Detroit Public Schools that make it very difficult for us to attract and to retain students. I myself, growing up in the city of Detroit, going off to college and getting a certification in the state of Pennsylvania and having to come back to the state of Michigan and get certified here in the state of Michigan as well, knew I wanted to teach and knew I wanted to come back here to Detroit and teach. Many of my colleagues and folks that I started out with didn't do that. They're coming second career folks. And so certainly the path has to be simpler for people who want to serve our children in the city of Detroit. And I'm glad that many, we have friends like Dr. Rice in the state and others around, and who see that and want to assist and want to help, because certainly it's much needed. And we certainly know that we have to do a multitude of those things to really conquer this issue.
Thank you very much. Your earlier comments really help us to segue into our second topic. This is a topic raised by members of our audience. It centers on increasing the retention of teachers once they enter the profession. This is a national problem. In a 2018 study out of the University of Pennsylvania prior to the pandemic, Richard Ingersoll, who's made his career studying the teacher shortage, reported that 44% of new teachers were leaving the profession within the first 5 years. In the wake of the COVID pandemic, a recent poll by the National Education Association estimates that over 55% of its members are considering leaving the profession earlier than they had planned. Now, members of our audience nominated, as has been discussed so far, financial incentives is one strategy for increasing teacher retention, including increasing salaries and providing bonuses to teachers who remain in the profession over some fixed period of time. In fact, the current budget proposed by the governor and under consideration by the legislature includes a series of graduated bonuses over 4 years for staying in the profession. But all of these initiatives rest on the assumption that for teachers, staying in the profession, retention, is at least partly a financial decision. Now, Senator Paulhanke, you have unique perspective on this. You've been both a teacher and a policymaker. Do you feel that state policymakers understand how teachers feel and how teachers reason in deciding whether to stay or leave the profession? And do you feel that financial incentives are responsive to how teachers feel and reason about this decision?
No, legislators do not get it. They're not cognizant of a teacher's life and the fact that they might be stuck on step 6 for 9 years. No, not at all. And the second part of the question was what?
Do you feel that financial, well, I mean, I'd be interested to hear more about what you think.
Yes, financial incentives. Yes, money. These teachers have to get paid. They are highly trained, highly educated, master's level, professionals. And it really just frustrates me that the legislators in Michigan for the past few decades don't get that. And again, is it because 75% of teachers are women? I don't know. I always take an opportunity if I have a little audience just to put that out there. Is sexism involved? Because we are tasked with providing money for public education. And what does it say about the state of Michigan when we are deficient, so deficient in paying a body of mostly women, you know, in a profession that's so important for our kids. I have a whole list of 13 teacher recruitment and retention bills that we're going to introduce next month, maybe in a couple weeks. We've got scholarship programs, tuition reimbursement, childcare reimbursement, grow your own programs, making your great paras into, you know, teachers if they want it, paying your student teachers $15 an hour. I'll tell you what, that can be discriminatory against low income folks. If your tryout period, which can be a semester or a year, you know, you're not allowed to work. You're holed up like I was in my parents' basement at the age of 30, and you just got to somehow make it happen. So student teachers definitely need to get paid. So all these things, you know, can help recruit teachers. And as far as the retention piece, we've got to separate out this school aid fund from funding community colleges and higher ed. That's something that's not going to happen overnight. But, you know, we'll see where the will is in the Michigan legislature with these initiatives. We'll see very soon what the majority party values in terms of education by how they allocate this money.
Now, among our audience members, in addition to their questions about where finances fit in teachers' calculus about staying or leaving, they also express concerns about teacher retention as centered on issues of working conditions and broader regard for the work of teachers. Several audience members expressed concern that many teachers don't feel respected as professionals. Others mentioned concerns with the pressure of accountability assessments and teacher evaluation, the loss of prep time and increased class sizes due to staff shortages, the loss of professional development opportunities due to staffing shortages, managing student behavior and mental health, often while short-staffed, dealing with threats of violence, pivots to and from online learning, and teachers managing their own mental health and well-being. At the same time, they're trying to support students as they make their way through the dire effects of the pandemic. Mr. Martin, in your role as president of the Detroit Federation of Teachers, your work centers on giving voice to teachers' concerns, not only about salary and benefits, but also about their working conditions, about how they feel as professionals. What are your teachers telling you about their working conditions and about how they feel? And how are these matters bearing on their decisions either to switch schools and districts or to leave the profession altogether?
Those are the issues, from the lack of preparation time to the constant evaluation process to managing a classroom, the conditions, the physical plan of our school buildings. These are all the reasons that our folks are giving us as to why they're deciding whether or not to continue in the profession or to call it quits. And many of them stem from our schools not being properly funded. Obviously, we know that. But what the pandemic has done is simply revealed all of these things to us. First and foremost, the job is not easy at all. Secondly, we've got to sort of reimagine what a school day looks like. We've got to start from the basics. What we've been able to find, although it's not the ideal situation, is that schools have to be diverse in what they offer students and families. DPS did not have an online component prior to the pandemic, but it developed one and it is viable, and many of our families and teachers appreciate it and are able to work in it, and students are able to, some students are able to strive. As we know, face-to-face instruction is probably best for most students, but there's a small pocket that could benefit from that. But we've got to really reimagine what schools look like, what a school day looks like, and there's got to be more time. Not only more time for preparation, but more time for teachers to really assess for mental health, really looking at alternative programs for our students during the school day. Many of those programs are offered for after school, but as we know, our families here in Detroit have issues with transportation and childcare. But to be able to offer programs to help students and teachers deal with stress, deal with mental illness, deal with mental health, will certainly be beneficial for them. Our job has always been, or philosophy has always been, take care of the things that are on the periphery that keep students from learning, keep teachers from teaching, and then you'll get a quality product that comes out of that classroom.
Thank you. Now, Ms. Heard, I'm wondering if you could provide a complementary perspective to Mr. Martin's perspective. You in 482 Forward are both a parent and a student advocate. And the thing I'm wondering about is this, students and teachers share the same working conditions. What we just heard about for teachers plays for students too, I would think. And I'm curious, what are you hearing about the working conditions in schools and classrooms from the perspective of students?
Well, you know, it's no secret. Many of our buildings, not just only in Detroit, but across the state, many of our buildings are in disrepair. There's no secret. Here in Detroit, we have buildings, I don't know how many decades old. Roofs leaking, all kinds of things are happening. You just can't fix them. You just have to build new ones, or it's going to take millions and millions of dollars. And as the superintendent has said, and everybody else on this panel, we know that the schools have been grossly underfunded for the absolute longest. The one thing, and I think Terrence said it best, the one thing that COVID did for us is that it forced us to take a position to finally talk about all of the stuff that people have been screaming about for decades. I have two children. My oldest son has already gone through the school system. I want to give you a little phrase that people were screaming back then about 15, 20 years ago. Pardon the background. We've got, this is virtual, right? Okay, the ambulance, the fire unit, we're at home, okay? It's that.
Good.
Anyway, book supplies, classroom size. Now my son's 27 years old. That's what was going on then. Guess what? I have a high schooler now. Guess what was happening when he was about 5 or 6? We were talking about book supplies and classroom size. And in some respects, we're still talking about classroom size, except and now it's just grown into all of these other things that the politics of it is thrown in there. Listen, this stuff is happening. It's happening now, and it's been happening. I believe, and that's one of the things that 482 is we are definitely fighting for, is full and fair, equitable funding because of the gross underfunding of our schools. We need the resources. We need the resources to fund the classrooms. We need the resources to support the teachers. We need the resources to repair the buildings. Now, we do have COVID funds, but that's only temporary. That's not going to last. Folks are doing what they can and what they need to do with that money. But what happens a couple years from now when that money has to be spent? I think by 2023, 2024, then what's going to happen? What we are hearing is it's craziness. We have a charter school in one of our, because many of our organizers do things by neighborhood. We have a charter school in one of our neighborhood, the neighborhoods that we organize in, and the boiler has been broken for about 3 or 4 weeks. Now, 3 or 4 weeks ago, there have been some warm days, but it's been cold. We've hearing that the kids are taking turns sitting in front of the space heater trying to get warm. What are we doing? And so here we go. My thing is, we know what the issue is. Underfunding is critical. Funding is critical, and we've got to do it. We got to do it now.
Thank you. One final theme that ran through comments from members of our audience centered on the broader political context in the state and in the country, and on the ways that political turbulence bears on the work of students and teachers in classrooms. Some of our audience members are teachers, and the challenge that we heard from them is that they feel caught in the crossfire of interest and constituencies targeting districts, schools, and classrooms as context in which to advance both conservative and progressive political agendas. Now, as with the COVID pandemic, many teachers that we heard from said that they simply feel that they have to accept this political turbulence as a fact of life, that the only power that they have against this political turbulence is to leave the profession. Now, Mr. Rice, where does responsibility lie for managing the interface between the broader political climate and life in classrooms? Is it up to local leaders to buffer and bridge between political and classroom contexts? Is it a matter of consideration by state leaders as they debate policy? Is it a matter of consideration by interest groups and advocates, both conservative and progressive, as they set agendas and strategies and decide where it is they're going to duke it out?
Sure. Well, thank you for the questions. I'm not sure about the meaning of managing an interface or buffering between contexts, being a pre-K-12 educator as opposed to a higher educator, but I'll do the best I can with the questions. So those of us who have been in local schools and have served as local educators for the vast majority of our career, but are now at the state level in policymaking roles, we have a responsibility to share the current context and needs in local schools. And these people would include not only former local educators who are now Michigan Department of Education staff, they include state legislators like Senator Paulhanke, former state legislators like Representative Kennedy or former Representative Kennedy, who's now our legislative liaison, leaders and staff members of state education organizations, including our teacher unions, but also those organizations that represent principals, business officials, and superintendents. In addition, local educators, teachers, principals, superintendents need to speak out and share as well. When I began my career, again, almost 4 decades ago as a high school French teacher in the Washington, D.C. public schools, I wanted to focus solely on my French classes, the high school level, my speech and debate team members. I didn't want to deal with the adult drama outside of the classroom, which has only gotten worse in the last 4 decades. I soon realized that I had no choice. Adult drama seeped underneath the doorway in spite of my shut classroom door. I needed to advocate for stronger teaching and learning conditions. I needed to use, if you will, my teacher voice. It was Frederick Douglass who once said, "Those who profess to cherish freedom yet deprecate agitation want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters." And he continued, and I paraphrase now in somewhat different language from the 1850s, people may not get all they pay for in this world, but they must certainly pay for all they get. If we're going to rebuild the teaching profession in support of our 1.4 million public school children in the state, all of us who have a stake in the profession, including our teachers, including our support staff, including our building administrators, we're going to have to speak up and speak out. That's just what it is. I'm not suggesting that's what you went to school to do, but you're in it, and we've got to slug it out. We've got several years of hard work to get this profession not simply back to where it was several years ago, but far beyond where it was several years ago in support of our young people.
Thank you. Dean Moje, you're leading an effort to launch the school at Marygrove as a new type of community school in Detroit. This is an initiative that involves building coalitions among many diverse stakeholders of the sort that Dr. Rice was just discussing. What's been your experience in managing the relationship between the political context in which schools and classrooms and districts exist in the professional context of classroom life for teachers in their work with students?
Thanks for that question, Don. But I just have to say, I'm having trouble resisting commenting on all the past questions because they're so engaging. And I'm not going to resist, actually. I just have to comment on this idea of incentives for teachers, for people to join the profession. I want to actually stop creating disincentives for teachers. I want adequate compensation for professional work. And I don't think that's an incentive. I think that is deserved. It's owed. And until we recognize that as a nation, let alone as a state, we're not going to make a dent. So I want to say here to all the panelists who've been speaking so passionately about that. And let's work together on trying to make that happen. Now, I'll turn back to your question, because if I don't, I'll hear it tomorrow from my colleague, Dr. Purak. And that question has to do with our experience at the school at Marygrove. I want to start by saying the school at Marygrove is a Detroit public school. So it is a public school collaboration with the University of Michigan and many other fabulous partners, the Marygrove Conservancy and Starfish Family Services. And we're just so thrilled to have this opportunity to build a school focused on design thinking and engineering for social justice. So I can answer your question about the politics of education, which, by the way, like Dr. Rice, I would say have always been in place. We've always worked through the politics of education. Throughout my teaching career as a high school teacher, I dealt with those politics as well. But I can say that at the school at Marygrove, we serve our families. We serve the children, and they want a school that cares about social justice and about educating the future to be able to be leaders, to be able to be the community members who not only make the change, but sustain the change. So our approach is actually to work with evidence, and the evidence shows us that we have the practices in place. We have anti-racist practices, we have decolonizing practices. We are committed to really helping teachers become the best teachers they can be, so the children can be the best leaders they can be in the future. And when we work with families and we meet their needs, that takes care of the politics, at least in our experience. I also want to second Dr. Rice in saying, as teachers, I'm a teacher right now. I teach older students, but I'm in high school classrooms, I'm in middle school classrooms, I'm in classrooms with little babies. We are always teaching, and we always have to be speaking up and speaking out and standing up for justice.
Thank you. So at this point, what we'd like to do is shift into some audience question and answer. We've asked people to enter any questions that they have while in attendance today. And I think we have time for two of these questions. And for this, I'll need a little bit of help from our host tonight, Anna Foster, whose voice you heard at the beginning. Foster, I'm wondering, can you pull forward a few additional questions from what you're seeing in the Q&A?
Sure. One thing that seemed like maybe not something that's been quite touched on yet is centering around solutions, and then also curiosity about the activities of the different panelists in that space. So let's see, framing it as a question. How can our attendees learn more about what the panelists and their organizations feel are the best solutions to the teacher shortage?
It'll be helpful to know if there are websites or position papers from different organizations, and we'd be happy to gather that and make it available. But for the moment, Dr. Rice, does the Michigan Department of Ed have a statement or a paper that summarizes potential solutions for which it's advocating?
Sure, we've got a series of recommendations that we've made to the 148 state legislators, to the governor. Many of those recommendations were embedded in the governor's budget, which she presented to the state legislature on February 9th. They're available on our website, Michigan Department of Education website. In addition, there are a number of PowerPoint presentations that we've done to the State Board of Education in the last 6 to 9 months around the teacher shortage and around our efforts to address the teacher shortage and the need really for the legislature to begin to fund better public education. We know that it's not all about money, but that it's not all about money doesn't mean that it isn't at all about money. It most assuredly is in part about money. And several of our panelists have focused on the importance of money. We know that it's not sufficient, but we also know that it's necessary and that you can't go to Meijer and pay your bills with a hearty handshake or a clap on the back. It is true that our educators are mission focused, but they need to do more than simply receive thanks and praise and kudos and for their work. They need to receive a reasonable compensation. But a number of the other things, Dr. Pirak, that you mentioned are in fact financially based. Ms. Heard referenced class sizes, she referenced materials, she referenced supports outside of the classroom for our young people. President Martin did as well. These all have price tags on them, every single one of these. And I'll just mention one other thing if I could. So it was in the summer of 2018 when the state legislature for the very first time put a single dollar in the State School Aid Act for children's mental health, $30 million in the summer of 18 for fiscal year 2019. Now, $30 million sounds like a lot. For 1.5 million kids, it's $20 a kid. That doesn't sound like a lot. The governor in her budget that she presented to the state legislature in February recommends $361 million for children's mental health, 12 times that initial investment 3.75 years ago. We're in a different world. That's the good news. Bad news is we've got a lot of catching up to do.
Other panelists, what we'll do on behalf of our audience members is pool you afterwards for resources to which you would direct audience members to understand your positions on potential solutions. I take their point. It would be really helpful to know where each of your organizations stand on these so that they could size them up, compare them to each other, and form their own ideas.
I can just add to that
yes, sir,
really quickly. It's been mentioned on this panel that the teacher shortage issue is not just local, it's national. I happen to be a part of a task force with the National American Federation of Teachers who are really looking at ways and solutions to address the teacher shortage issue, or really the education professional shortage issue across the country. And on their website, AFT.org, it'll have a number of the things that we've done thus far in terms of the work that we're conducting. Obviously, it's different from one state to the next, from one local municipality to the next, but really the issues are the same. Obviously, it's funding, it's one, but it's also on the other hand, it's the working conditions that many of our folks have been forced to work in, and students have been forced to learn in, and so those are really the two major pieces that many of our folks are looking at across the country. But obviously, it's one of those things that it's going to be a moving target for a number of years, and obviously what we've seen in the pandemic has really shed a lot of light for others to see, and now people are starting to pay attention.
Excellent. We'll be in touch with you, everybody else, and get those AFT documents and push them out to everybody who registered. I think we have time for one quick question before one more quick question before we begin to head into our summary. So Foster, is there another question that you see?
Yeah,
Q&A that you might pull forward?
Sure. I don't know if it'll be quick, but there's a couple of folks here who've asked about getting involved, and it's included folks from groups like the NWEA, or sort of specifically about getting involved, advocating for things like the Grow Your Own Teacher programs. So a question for the panelists might be, how can attendees make their voices and ideas heard, or advocate either at state, local, or maybe national levels for the things that you've been talking about tonight?
Well, that's a terrific question. I mean, one of the challenges that we faced in pulling together this town hall is that we needed to synthesize a lot of voices into a structure that made sense for our conversation. We had over 80 comments submitted through our pre-registration process, but I'm sure that audience members have quite a lot more. If we could quickly, Senator Paulhanke, do you have any recommendations for our audience about how they could be heard by policymakers in Lansing?
Yes, every Tuesday at noon. I won't say every Tuesday, and every in the Senate, and every Tuesday at 9 a.m. in the Michigan House, you can see the Senate and Education and Career Readiness Committee happen live on TV. You go to, michigan.gov, Senate TV. I think you'd find it interesting. If you find this panel interesting, I think you'd find it interesting. A lot of talk has been about school funding, but you wouldn't know that that's a problem. The things that we've talked about in the Education Committee in the Michigan Senate lately have been the fake critical race theory scandal, the non-issue of trans kids in sports. Coming down the pipeline is going to be requiring teachers to publish online all their class materials on day one. So you'd think we'd be talking about funding, and we're really not. So you can sign up for the listserv to be notified when the education committees meet. And then you watch, them on the live stream. And then I'm sure in this audience, there are so many great perspectives. Ask to testify. All you do is you email the leaders, the majority leaders, and you'll get to testify. So that's how you can make your voice heard. Absolutely. And I encourage everyone to do that.
Excellent. That's one thing I was wondering if Ms. Heard could provide some perspective on. I know that 482 Forward has a lot of experience advocating in Lansing, likely in some of the ways that Senator Paulhanke just mentioned, likely in others. I'm wondering if you have any recommendations for our audience members.
Yes, I was just about to plug that. So absolutely. And we have met with Senator Paulhanke, and I just absolutely love her because she keeps it real and she lets you know what's happening for real. And so what I want to tell folks is definitely 482 Forward. We definitely meet with our legislators. We talk about the issues. We are actually pushing for full, fair, and equitable funding right now. Just to kind of talk about a little bit about what Senator Paulhanke was talking about and some of the things that's happening in the Education Committee. There are good bills that would really right-size a lot of this craziness in our schools, only if some of the majority party would give some of these bills a hearing, right? And that's not happening. But I really believe that we have a voice and we can push legislators to do the right thing. Now, we also have, not only are we 482, even though we focus mostly on city, but we also have a statewide table, a coalition called the MEJC. And so we have partners across the state. So I would just like to encourage folks, if they are interested, 482forward.org. You can find us on Facebook as well as IG for additional information. But we are definitely in the fight, not just about teacher shortages, but we've got the voucher situation that's going on right now that threatens funding for Michigan public schools. A lot of folks are not really aware about that. And so if you want to get involved, please, I admonish you right now, please do so, and we can talk about it because we're doing it.
Terrific. Thank you very much. So we're coming up on time. I know we have many, many more questions than we have time to answer. We'll find a way to synthesize those, pose them, create other opportunities to talk. But in closing, what I'd like to do is to give each panelist an opportunity to share a few final thoughts, comments on something said in our earlier conversation, comments on key points that didn't arise in our earlier conversation, or one or two specific action steps that audience members can take in their own efforts to address the teacher shortage. Let's begin with Dr. Rice.
Well, I want to thank people who have come to listen to the panel, to participate in the panel. I want to thank my fellow panelists. I want to thank U of M, the Dean, you, Dr. Purak, Dr. Delavecchia. I would ask the state legislature, to the extent that you believe that the teacher shortage is substantial and is adversely affecting children across the state, where is your urgency? Where is your focus? Where are your efforts? We've had precisely no hearings whatsoever on solutions to the teacher shortage during this school year in the state legislature. Where is the state legislature?
Thank you. Senator Paulhanke.
I'd like to take that even further in my capacity, as a senator, and not a candidate, I guess I should say. I can't tell you who to vote for, but I can say that it is important to vote and to research your candidates who have on their websites, the platform, it should say something about school funding. Really research, who you're voting for. In the Michigan Senate, it's been controlled by one party for 38 years. So, the dynamic could shift with 3 seats flipped in 2022. Could be a whole different ballgame. The majority party sets not only the schedule, but they look at every bill that comes through, every one of them. And I've had many, many dozens. And they decide if it's going to get a hearing or if it's going to die. And, it can be political. For example, I've had a lot of great bills and not a one has gotten a hearing ever. And that's due to politics, exclusively politics, because they're good. They're all good ideas. Like not flunking third graders based on one test that they take every spring in one day of their life. So I would say just vote very consciously and do your research, because it could be a game changer after this next election.
Thank you. Dean Moje, final thoughts.
I would echo my 2 predecessors who spoke, and everyone on the panel in saying we have to come up with solutions and we have to come up with them quickly. We don't need more Band-Aids. And I'll just say teaching is the most important profession because it touches all other professions. It enables all other professions. So if we really believe in all children and their capacity to grow and learn and lead our future, then we need to invest in our teachers. I'll stop there. And thank you, Don, for pulling this together.
Absolutely. Mr. Martin.
A quick plug for the Michigan Education Justice Coalition, which Detroit Federation of Teachers is a part of, and 482 Forward are a part of. We've done some amazing work in and around education in the city of Detroit and around the state of Michigan. So for those who certainly want to get involved, this is certainly the place to be. Just really quickly, I just challenge us to really expand the conversation of teacher shortage and really talk about education professional shortage. I'll give you a quick example. During the pandemic, prior to the pandemic, we have folks who work in our food service program. And those folks are individuals who at lunchtime, they feed children in classrooms, in schools every day. Well, during the pandemic, they went from feeding children to feeding the city all day. And these are the folks that we have to fight for them to make a living wage. These are the people that we have to fight for them to be respected in schools and in the state. And so when you really think about it, these are folks who are the backbone of our communities, and schools being the backbones of our communities and our neighborhoods. And so let's properly fund it. We can do it. We are professionals. We know what the issues are. We can retain teachers. We can attract teachers with the proper funding and resources to do so. So I challenge our legislature to do that, and for our communities, our respective communities, to get involved. If there is not an MEJC in your neighborhood or community, find one or create one, because it's going to take all of us to solve these issues, and our children deserve it.
Thank you. And Ms. Heard, the last word.
Oh, you're rhyming now. Heard's got the last word. Okay. I'm so serious. I'm serious. But listen, folks, I just really want to just speak to folks right quickly and just say, we got to pay attention. It's not business as usual. We can't afford to just, go in our houses and just let that be the day and start the day over tomorrow. I want to pick up on something that Senator Paulhanke said. We need to pay attention to who we're putting in these seats. We really do. It's no longer just going in the booth and just blindly going up and down the ballot and voting for somebody that sounds good. No, we need to check out these people, check out their voting records, find out what they stand for, who they're hanging around, follow the money. We all walk around with a computer in our pockets, and that's our phones. You can research and Google just about anything and find out. It's only going to take you 10 or 15 minutes to research. Follow what's happening. And then the other thing, please make sure that we are getting involved. Let's just do something about it. You don't have to, write long papers or on op-ed or anything, but you can get involved in organizations like 482 Forward, like the MEJC, and other organizations and partners who are doing something around the state about education, about justice, and speaking up. You can be a member of these organizations and really help to affect change. We're working with legislators like Senator Paulhanke and others who really understand this and get this thing. But you got to get involved, and we can no longer be asleep at the wheel. It's time to do something, and we got to do it now.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank all our panelists for joining us tonight to discuss Michigan's teacher shortage, both its underlying challenges and its possible solutions. And for me, one thing that really emerged from planning tonight's session and then conducting it is that Michigan's teacher shortage is a textbook example of a wicked problem. There's no one underlying root cause of the teacher shortage. Rather, there are many interdependent causes that require many interdependent solutions. Pooling the collective understandings of our audience members and our panelists, we learned that it will require bridging from high school to college to career, considering viable, rigorous alternatives to entering the teaching profession, improving compensation and incentives, and improving working conditions and social respect. Now, these solutions interact. Success improving the teacher pipeline amplifies the importance of retaining new teachers as they enter the profession. Improving teachers' working conditions and social respect feeds back onto efforts to improve the pipeline into the teaching profession. Yet, listening to our audience members and the comments that they submitted in advance, political turbulence, both broadly and locally, politicizes classrooms in ways that are untenable for many professional teachers. And it risks undercutting efforts both to improve the pipeline and to improve teacher retention. So solving wicked problems requires collaboration, cooperation, mutual respect, and compromise among many vested interests and constituencies. Requires abandoning extremes to meet at the center, to weigh challenges and solutions, build consensus, pool resources, implement programs and policies, and learn together from experience. So we thank our audience and our panelists for meeting at the center at the EdHub for Community and Professional Learning to collaborate in framing Michigan's teacher shortage as a policy problem and in weighing underlying challenges and potential solutions. We look forward to further conversations about efforts to improve education for students in Michigan and in the United States and around the world. Again, on behalf of the EdHub team, thank you very much for joining us. Now, please stay on for just a few minutes for information about our next EdHub event and for guidance in staying connected with the EdHub. Again, thank you and good night.